Hey y'all, grown black folks talk. On the climb, a little bit of a different position. Wanted to get y'all a chance to see me in the sunshine. We'll see how long the wind will let us be great from this position though. This is a short video. I could have done this inside, but I want to make this as easy. I want there to be enough beauty in this background so you can really comprehend what I'm about to say. I'm sure you already read the description. The deadly confusion of Jerome Brown. I have only one phase to talk about. I said in my video this morning that you could sit down 5 serious-minded religions and you repeat back what Jerome Brown said before he began the act of a crime against humanity that led to his death, and they would have all told you that ain't it. So you're going to swear by your black grandmother before you then attempt to destroy the life, because the man's got 3 punches on a woman. He could have killed her any of those times. Of the woman in your grandmother's image. I swear on my granny, you say one more thing. As it happens, Miss Carlicia Hood was trying to tell her son stay in the car. She did not want him involved. So I have to retract something that I said earlier. She was trying to think about him. That detail I didn't have. Son had to get involved anyway. Jerome Brown is dead, and he went exactly where he prepared for his soul to be. Because I'll just take this from my perspective, confidence with love, and a good solid Muslim or Jewish perspective. All 3 of your Judeo-Christian religions will tell you, first of all, you do not do anybody. It said in Proverbs chapter 30, he who does violence to the blood of any man shall flee to the pit, and that no one stay him. Man there is human being. So when you set your mind to do violence to any other person, you have written your death warrant. That's what that means. This is why in the great long run, since the United States has made it its business of being one of the most violent nations on earth, chickens are coming home to roost. People who thought that they could just export violence to everyone else are finding out their own children are turning around and shooting up their schools. It's inevitable. That's number 1. The other thing that same Bible says is honor for elders. And then you only swear by God. And then Jesus said, don't even bother to do that. Let your yes be yes. In the Old Testament, you're still Judeo, you swear by the Lord. If you're in the New Testament, you're a Christian, swear not at all. So now you have, no matter what you do, you have direct contravention of several commandments. That's blasphemy. That's blasphemy. Christian, that's blasphemy. And the fact that you swore by anyone in the commission of a crime against humanity, that's blasphemy. That's taking your granny's name in vain. To say nothing of taking all of God's commands in vain. That's blasphemy. So, sometimes blasphemy is judged quickly. Now, let me also say this as a Christian. I'm not sure if this is well enough understood. People have this idea that you can be a Christian and get away with stuff for a long time. No! Every time the communion happens, God says, before you ask for anything from me or do anything involving me, go get it straight with your brothers and your sisters. Because you not doing that is the cause why many of you are sick and many of you are dead. Black people have the most churches and the unhealthiest people in the country. Get it together. Figure it out. But the United States has some of the most churches in the country and has some of the unhealthiest people. Figure it out. God has not changed his mind since Ananias and Sapphira. He's just patient and doesn't send people out every day. Well, Jerome Brown messed up and rushed around and found out. Sometimes you get taken out that day. But then, from confidence from love's perspective, if black women are goddess born, you swore by the woman you made your goddess and then did violence to her image, That's blasphemy directly. And see, to borrow a phrase from her, if he had just bowed the knee and tithed and left that woman alone, he'd still be alive. But that's blasphemy. He messed around. He found out from either perspective. But let me tell you just the level of confusion, the deadly confusion of Jerome Brown. Black men of his mindset, because he has a long record. He's a community terrorist. There are many such in the black community. The vast majority of them are black men. If occasionally, and it stands out, you will meet a terror of a woman. It does happen. And I mean, not in self-defense. I mean, she's just a terror. It does happen. But most of them, we know what the numbers say, right? We're not going to argue about that. You will hold a black woman as the person that you swear by. So you hold her as a goddess, but at the same time you hate that woman. It's a very strange pathology, but it plays out in deadly ways all day long for black women, and sometimes for black men. Tory Lanez, maybe a case of this, don't know. But in Jerome Brown's case, literally he swore by his grandmother. I know black men who were raised by their grandmother, and they revere black women because of that. I know Booker T. Washington is one of these examples. He was raised primarily by his mother. He said, because my mother was so wonderful, I knew Africa had to be wonderful. I know more black men who translated it that way. The way my father talks about his mom and his grandma and his great-grandma and what they accomplished. I can see that translating to how he treats my mom and how he treated his mother-in-law and how he treats women in general. So it is a new concept for me to realize that black men want to hold black women, certain black women, as goddesses, but hate black women's image so much. It's a pathology. And then when we have the submission conversation, you want this black woman to make your life everything it needs to be. Only through her do you have a full black genetic legacy. So you can put your image out to the world again. So you want her to provide, you think she exists to provide your genetic legacy. But at the same time, you want her to come with 50% of the resources so you can live a better standard of life because you don't think you can get there. So she has to do the work of a goddess, but at the same time, she needs to be submissive. So you have a goddess elder who you don't respect, and goddess slaves you don't intend to respect. That's deep, y'all. I mean, it was real bold in Matthew and Luke that Satan said to Jesus, who made him as Lucifer, if you bow down to me, I'll give you all this. That's deep right there. I mean, that's super deep. But it's also super deep to consider that there are black men walking the earth who have the image of a black woman they hold above all others, even as a goddess, and still think that it's okay to beat down on every woman in her image. Because again, Mr. Brown had a long record that was ended by that 14-year-old. That's deadly confusion. And this is the thing. That confusion can't be fixed. That also tells you, ladies, that no matter how that man talks about his mother and how much he loved her, it is entirely possible that he can have black women in his family that he loves and still hate the rest of black women. In the same way that Jeff Sessions has black friends who think he's a delightful individual, but he's also a Southern racist. In the same way that most black people who knew Robert E. Lee just loved him, but he's got 100 to 120,000 people on his record, most of whom were white, fighting for black people to stay enslaved. It can happen that people can pick an exceptional individual and still hate that mass of people. In their pride, they think they found one worth saving. White saviorism is basically about that. Wanting to take one person and showing what they can do with the worst of people. And you know, we understand that because of the play My Fair Lady. It involved a white woman though. I can take a poor, low-class white woman and make her into a woman who's fit to be a lady. And then that's what that's about. The rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain. is them taking her actual accent and teaching her to act like her. And it's a bet between two men. White saviorism basically says about black people, we can make an exception, one, just because we're God enough to do that. Well, there are black men who have that idea about black women. There may be a woman who worked and slaved and made life happen for them that they revere for that reason. And because she's gone on, now she's ascended to be with the ancestors. But he still has a basic hate and disrespect because he saw that elder not having respect for herself, but only for him. That happens more often than you think. This is how you can get an Anton Daniels, have a black wife and a black daughter, and as long as they don't displease him. See, I think his daughter someday is going to carry the brunt of that. But then hate black women. This is how I have students who went through this. They loved their daughters as long as they were little girls, but they watched a lot of pornography and they talked about black women as objects. And I broke with them and showed them that every black woman isn't going to take that when I found out they were going to treat me that way. I'm like, oh, you going to mouth off to me? I'm going to give you just what you want. Bye. And then told their daughters and helped them get out. I have black men that I know that it took them about a year or two to figure out, no, I ain't coming back. Ain't no second chances. I have black men that finally figured out and hate my guts, even though they revere their mother. I am no one's goddess, nor will I be anyone's slave. I was talking to my mother about the kind of man for whom I would consider coming off single. I've been really looking for that type of man since 16. This doesn't mean that I didn't love the men that I loved. And also I wasn't clear on what I wanted, or I would have made different decisions at 16, 17, 18, 19, to 40, to 37. And I can go back and look at my life and see I was moving in that direction, but I wasn't moving far enough and I wasn't including enough people of enough races. Because I can't have a man who worships his grandmother, but still thinks it's okay to mistreat me. I am no one's goddess. I will be no man's slave. And since that pathology is so deep, unfortunately, it's like I shared yesterday. For me to be able to live in this neighborhood the way it is now, the way it had to be gentrified, who was selling the drugs and doing the killing on the street, every time some black man does something in this neighborhood that's not cool, guess who gets a check from the rest of the neighborhood about, did you bring that man in here? But other races of people have their pathologies. I talked this morning about, yesterday morning by the time you see this, I talked about how other people are coming in here using access that black men and women made for them, and are still out here shutting us out of things we did the work to give them access to. Other groups of people have their pathologies. I just talked about the way a white racist can get, despises black people, but will take and be proud to make an exception of one black woman or man. Shout out to Clarence Thomas. Came through on affirmative action and didn't think anybody else should have the right to it after that. He's got his wife and his friends. Hey, beautiful.
Mom, she's just saying hello. You can wave back at her. She's just saying hello. Hi, how are you?
Hello. Beautiful child.
She's just talking to a friend right now. Mama does that all the time.
Where was I? I'm distracted by children. I spent so much of my life looking at them. Anyway, avoiding the pathology is necessary, and it's deep.
Wait,
The fact that not enough men are sitting up here talking about
let's be careful. We don't need here. Come here.
how that is all the way wrong, that this is still cool, they're still saying you have a right to beat down, and women raise them. I was saying where I live, already you're going to be pushed in that direction because of the way the neighborhood is. They're not trying to go through the stuff we went through in the 90s and the 2000s. So opening one's options becomes necessary because the pathology is so deep and there's so much chance of getting someone who's a black man who presents as loving his mom and his grandma, who can swear by his grandmother and take her life. Deadly confusion. And as black women, we have to vet and understand that this is the thing that's going on. Doesn't it? By the way, that doesn't just happen to black men. It's just one more thing to think about. But it's something that we need to understand, that being made anyone's idol and on the way of being made enslaved is just one more thing we have to factor in. Because we have men swearing by their black grandmothers and trying to kill the women in their grandmother's image. We have to let that confusion be deadly only for the men who are involved in it. Let that deadliness of confusion stay right there. Let the results of blasphemy stay right there. Separate yourself from evildoers. The minute you notice that kind of patterning, get gone. In anyone. But it's prevalent right now, unfortunately. We see a lot of it with black women dealing with black men who secretly hate them. First red flag, I don't care about how he talks about his mom. Get out. If he disrespects you in any way, no matter how he talks about his grandmother, get out. Jerome Brown, in his inglorious, disrespectful passing, U-32 bettered by a 14-year-old who had more manhood and more respect for his female elders. And his inglorious passing has provided us an important lesson. And for the sake of your life, ladies and gentlemen, if you are dealing with this confusion, please, please, please seek help. MyMentor.life was founded by a black man, and you will be able to find black male life coaches. There's more black women, black coaches, but you can search and find them. Please get help if you get these thousands inside yourself. Because the case of Jerome Brown can tell you, your number's going to come up. You cannot blaspheme forever and not get those consequences. Please get help. And brothers, if you are all right about this, check your brothers before they get hurt. Because the other thing is going to happen is eventually cities like Chicago is going to get swept out. I live in a city that was swept out, and like I said, white people check black people about factoring more black people of that type in here. They ain't coming back. Barring some catastrophic, barring some earthquake or something, they ain't gonna come back big enough so that it really changes the composition of the city. Ain't nobody coming. They ain't coming back in here. For those of you that need to know also about that Supreme Court ruling, yeah, that takes out race, but black women are still women, meaning affirmative action for gender has not been struck down yet. Guess who just got knocked out of Harvard, USC, and all the rest? Not black women. We can still get in there on affirmative action. In addition to going on the merits, guess who can't? And that means the resentment and the hatred is going to grow unless black men focus on getting their boys ready as much as their counterparts are trying to do. So, vetting for these things is going to become even more important as black women continue to widen that gap, even with the Supreme Court decision. Watch for it, ladies. Him loving his mother, his grandmother, his sisters is not enough. And gentlemen, watch yourself. If women like me are thinking about crossing the concealed carry gap, and there's many black men that I love and generally relate well with black men even outside my family, watch yourselves. Don't think that you just get to come along and do this stuff. Be careful. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. Ladies, don't make excuses for these men. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. The deadly confusion of Jerome Brown is just that. Deadly. Alright, I did that outside because that's tough. Now, listen to the breeze for a little while. It's a gorgeous day. And we just gonna cleanse our thought process our information, and enjoy the rest of our day. Y'all have a good day. Thank you for listening.